Let me see about this sunlight. I might have to pull a curtain.
It's like you're having a nice day there.
Gorgeous. Yay! We had rain yesterday. I think that's better.
We had a bit of snow in the morning.
Wow, that's unusual, right?
Most unusual.
Ah, definitely different weather patterns.
It's been sunny today. It's been cold but bright and sunny.
Oh, good for you. You'll be able to take your walk, I think, right? Yeah. Yeah. Or you did already. It's the end of your day.
Oh yeah, it's dark now. I just pulled the curtains.
I pull my curtains because it's too sunny, and you pull yours because it's dark.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I do that too.
I do walk in the dark a bit when it's not really cold.
Yeah. Well, that's a sizable cup. I feel better that I have this gigantic luggage. Wait, let me grab my cup. How has your sleep been? Not to bring up a sore subject, hopefully. I don't want to take you there, but
yeah, occasionally a little better actually.
Okay. That's good.
Probably got the best part of 7 hours last night.
Ah, that's not shabby.
Experimenting with some herbs. I did a little bit of research on the interwebs, and willow bark is an anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, that's aspirin.
So I got some willow. Yeah, I got some willow bark on Amazon, and also turmeric. And I already had some turmeric, so I got a mixture of turmeric, ginger, and black pepper, because I remember hearing that black pepper increases the availability of the active stuff in turmeric.
Yep, a little bit of black pepper. I used white pepper
but
for
it tastes absolutely.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Is it foul?
So yes, I'll experiment with that. And I see the doctor on Wednesday, so I'll get the steroid injection on Wednesday.
Okay. Should I mention this or not? I was.
How have you been?
Oh.
Go on. Yeah, mention anything you like.
The mention is just because why not? It seems timely. Besides this gorgeous, I just looked through the reflection in my mirror that shows me this gigantic redwood that's just glittering in the wind. It's almost just like, like, you know, it's got the big waving, but the leaves are doing this. Oh, my sentinel. If you're open to it, and I know you're scheduled for steroids, which you know have side effects, but not to focus on that. And I don't know what's legal in Wales, but I am acquainted with at least 2 people and a whole community of people who are using a combination of CBD with THC, which is the cannabinoids from cannabis.
Yeah, the CBD is legal in the UK. I've got some of that.
Apparently,
the THC is not.
So I don't know how or if, but the formula I heard is mostly CBD, but with a tiny bit of THC, depending on your system. Somehow the THC creates more accessibility or more effectiveness of the CBD.
I mean, it's how they turn up in the natural plant, isn't it? Yeah. Some of each.
Yeah. And so
I got this legal CBD.
Okay. My friend was telling me she'd done a lot of work, and everyone's a little different what your system, but she uses an 8-to-1 ratio, 8 parts CBD to 1 part THC, and whatever amount she takes every hour, and it is as good or better than any steroidal treatment she's done. Or
I could get the illegal stuff easily enough, because there's so many hippies around here.
So if you can find that, that might be another thing to try, especially since you don't want to do sustained steroids because they tear up the system. Anyway,
there's a chap I know. There's a few people I know that grow very good quality weed.
All right. So either smoking it, she's doing like in the US, it's so pharmaceutical in a way now. You can actually, pull out the CBD, pull out the THC, and combine them in the quantities that makes the ratio you want for your,
Yep.
your need. But still, just to let you know, if you haven't explored that and you're open to it, that might be something to.
It's on the list of things to try. I'd prefer to keep it legal. Before it was legal, before the CBD was made legal, Linda Joy, who was not particularly a hippie, but she had cancer.
Yeah.
And she was getting into some hippies that I'm not quite sure where they were actually. She was getting very good quality cannabis oil.
Yeah.
And she found it helped with the pain, but she hated being stoned.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing. You reduce the
so that had the THC as well.
And that's why, that's the idea, is it doesn't knock you out and make you stoned. It just handles. Yeah. I don't like being stoned either. So, but
I've been stoned since, I don't know, long before I got sober. And I've been sober 25 years. So
yeah, it's been a while. It's been a short minute.
Yeah. When after Linda Joy died, she had some of the oil left.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot actually, and it was a good sized jar with a fair bit in there.
You rub it in.
And there was probably, I don't know, eight fluid ounces maybe. So I was asked to divide it up into two, to put it into two jars and to give them to two different, or no, someone was going to come to the door and collect the two jars.
Yeah.
And after I'd spooned into the two jars, I licked the spoon.
Uh-oh.
And I sat down in the chair and I thought that wasn't very good. I don't feel at all stoned. And then when I tried to get up, my legs didn't want to work. So that was CBD without the THC. So it had the physical calming effect, but not the whatever you call it.
Sedation, rubber legs. Yeah. Or you're just like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
when I used to work as a taxi driver, I would frequently get called to go to someone's house, pick them up, take them to another house, wait, and then take them home again. And I could tell when they got in the back of the car by the smell. I think I know what you're going to that other house for. There's one place I just stood. I sort of went up the door, knocked on the door, and he opened the door, and I thought I could get stoned just standing here. I mean, it just what the strength, the smell of it. And I shared a house with a guy for a couple of years elsewhere in Wales, and you could smell his up the street in the summer. I'm amazed that the copper didn't walk by and smell it.
I know. I had a housemate, an attorney actually, that was living downstairs here, and I knew every time they lit up, it's just the whole house. Yeah. That's one of the delights of life is well, I don't know why I was changing the subject. I don't really mean to be changing the subject, but I do want to focus on purpose while we're here together for this. So I want
to tell you one more cannabis story because it's quite funny.
It back in. I was going to say something about observing humans and connecting to them and finding what works for them. And I read your little journal entry just before.
Oh, you did? Oh, that was well done, because I only told you about an hour ago.
Yeah, I thought, well, why not? That would drop me into whatever you were sharing and why, and for us. And I was, what's the word? Well, it's a bunch of words. Pleased, delighted, of the shared reality, I guess is the term that I've heard used, this MDC term. Because I'm all about the deeper connection and relationship. That's, all the ways I find it for myself and find it with another, which for me is a lot about staying in the body and in the moment and in the heart. And so
when I didn't properly appreciate that there was something in me that was longing for that, I think I probably a few times I've freaked people out. So people who were friends but just didn't want that. They were just, I think that some people, I imagine that all of our deep time ancestors had that ability. And some of us are so traumatized, we just can't reach it anymore.
Right. And
Terrified to be that close to anyone.
it's a threat. I have found that
Mm.
very true, even in myself, longing for intimacy and terrified by it at the same time.
Mm.
Both emotions, you know, and almost an inability to embrace the longing because it's brings up the terror immediately, you know, to sort of, so to work and untangle those and find what just find slowing it down to be able to feel and name. This work with Sarah Payton, naming the emotion, understanding, you know, understanding why it comes up. You know, rational mind goes, why do you have terror mixed with intimacy when you want both, right? But the deeper self kind of goes, oh yeah, because you know, I know my childhood and all of it makes total sense when I, you know, look at it that way. And still the body, the sense, the soul is needing to let me find words. It's needing to almost become this, like, find this trusting, innocent place again that that almost, you know, expects intimacy to be nourishing rather than overwhelming or non-existent, or reminds me of abandonment, or, you know, all the things that are sort of weren't able to be understood when
I imagine in sort of Western industrial civilization, even the people who've had the most beautiful childhoods would have had experiences of where that the vulnerability that's obviously there in that closer connection, when that hasn't been received in the way we would ask.
Yeah,
it's been taken advantage of. So it's almost like we've all got some trauma around that.
I think humankind has trauma, and
Yeah.
some of us, I mean, there's therapy branches that talk about attachment, relationship attachment now, which I've studied and explains things to me. And we really need attunement, and then we also need accompaniment, which is resonance. As an infant, that's how our brain develops. That's how we it's so important when we're young. And for most, you know, mostly we need enough. We don't need it perfect. Like, we have a need and maybe it doesn't get met right away, but it gets met soon enough. And we have the mother that comes and holds us and helps our own nervous system relax, because it's up, you know, it's like, I have a need, I don't know what it is. And all a baby knows how to do is cry, you know, to ask for help. And so, but many of us had very, what's called insecure attachment. So secure attachment is when you get enough of that, and then you have a sense of yourself, and that you have, you know, significance, and you have competence, and you have influence, and you can kind of like create a sense of self and relate to other people. All of that gets patterned in the brain. And if it doesn't happen well, then we have different patterns of insecure attachment. So we either can't be alone because we need somebody else to feel even anything, you know, connected, or we don't want to be connected to anybody at all because we're aloof. And or we're something called disorganized, which is where we were actually afraid of that parent and needing them at the same time. You know,
I think I did a test to identify that a few years ago. I think that's the one that I came up with. I can't remember now.
Disorganized. Yeah. Yeah. I think me too. I used to think ambivalent or back and forth, but I think I really was pretty disorganized. And so that does explain why intimacy is super challenging, even though it's like very basic core primal need. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And yeah. Yeah.
So it's only, for me, it's only in the last 4 or 5 years, I guess, that I've kind of learned to appreciate that what I'm longing for is what other people, not everyone else, is longing for, and that I have some choice there.
Right.
So I'm not blundering into friendships and either getting freaking people out or getting into difficulty.
Right. You're not, in some ways, I think people feel defensive and threatened. If they're not open and also wanting it, even though for both, I think for everyone, it's a bit of an intimidating journey because very few of us know how to go, oh yeah, and really go deep without stuff coming up,
A few years ago, I did a training. I went to Spain as a trainer. He was originally American, a guy called Clinton Callahan.
Clinton Callahan, boy, that sounds familiar. Keep going.
He went to Germany, married a German woman, and gave up his American citizenship. So he's no longer American. And he showed us a technique where, I mean, the language is different to what we get from MVC. It's not remotely related to MVC, and they use a different language. But he talks about what he calls the box.
Yeah.
Which is what we show the world of ourselves. So that's all our defenses, all our beliefs, our assumptions, probably our trauma as well, actually.
Yeah.
And he showed us an exercise. This was 3 or 4 days into a week-long training. I think it probably needs a bit of
preparation,
a bit of pre-training to get into there. But we got to this exercise where we could sit with a complete stranger, and by agreement, we would both release all of that. And actually what he calls the being, and we meet being to being. And I sat across from a German woman who I met a few days before and had hardly spoken to because she had very little English.
Right.
And we both did this at the same moment. And I just went, oh, hey. And then Clinton's over the other side of the room and he said, you might be tempted to just say, hey, but I really like you to have a conversation. And we did, and I said, "Can we find something we disagree about?" And we went round through a few different things and came up with something we disagreed about, and it was just totally irrelevant.
Yeah, who cares?
Normally, I get really triggered by most kinds of alternative medicine, particularly the obviously the ones that are obviously placebos or obviously complete bollocks. And she was I don't think she was a professional, but she was well into homeopathy, which is my bête noire. And it just didn't matter. It was just the experience was all of that was just brushed aside. The experience was of meeting another human, choosing and practicing to meet another human being, which is the same experience that I sort of stumbled into with Linda Joy.
Exactly.
A few weeks before.
Yeah, just letting all that go and being.
Yeah.
However, we don't even have language anymore for it anymore. In the heart might be a way to say it, but it's just so, it doesn't.
So there's something about what Clinton had already taught us and about the way he held the space, the way he held the room. Because I think it was probably 30 people there. So there's probably 15 pairs.
Right.
And so something about the way he held it, that there was a trust.
Yeah.
In that he knew what he was doing, that this was safe, and that this woman obviously it was okay to just relax all of these defenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to do some more of that, and he stopped doing that kind of training. He's doing something else now.
He's alive and he's alive and doing. He has a community. I ran into him also and followed him for a while in terms of what is he doing, and there's different groups all over the world, and they have these.
Yeah.
And I started to really want to just be part of that. And then somehow for me, I haven't met him in person, but seen a little bit of video. And I think it was what slowed me down and kind of steered me away a little was the distinctive language that becomes, for me, I've been in a religious cult, and when the language gets so specific that only people in that group can speak in that language. I mean, NVC has a little bit of this too. It becomes like too insular in a way for me. I back off of that and say, well, you know, then I'm really only able to participate with people who have this whole basis that they're coming in with. And
yeah, I'm absolutely with you there. I go to some trouble when even when I'm talking to MVC people, that I'm not talking the language of MVC.
right.
I'm talking everyday English.
Right. And that's why I just thought, it's gotten in it. Just felt like it was getting a little too cultish is the word I'll use for me, you know, like he's the
there was a
guru
few
and all
things that
these
came up
people
for me. And
yeah.
I went for a second week with, not with Clinton, but with some people that he trained.
Yeah.
That was in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the last time I went to one of their trainings.
Right.
I thought it was interesting, it was useful, and there was some stuff there that I wasn't comfortable with.
Right. Take what you can use out of it and then
Yeah.
take that into life. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that I just want to pause here. Yeah, because that actually revealed some information to me, having that little conversation.
You're a cult.
Yeah, the idea of my own radar for what starts to be like cultish, that's pretty well developed, and that I don't want to become a cult. That whatever it is, it's my purpose and my gift. I don't really want it to be so sort of exclusive or exclusive, meaning excluding of people. That it's you know, it's, I don't know, it's not, I'm aware.
I imagine for some people that sort of secret language within a cult is probably quite attractive. They can imagine themselves superior.
Yes, exactly. I think that's what's happening in the
ones.
US. You know, we have the liberals and then we have the conservatives, and that's really like a language difference because the needs are the same, but the language separates, you know, and the way that, more than just that, but it's sort of that. So yeah, I want to, you know, I want to keep inviting anyone and everyone into this place you talked about, where you can just sit with a person and be in the energy of love, and not all the other stuff that, you know, separates us. Yeah, there you have it. Yeah.
So if that's my purpose, well, that's not exactly my purpose, because that doesn't to me describe a purpose. It's sort of, it's information that's leading me towards the purpose.
Yeah.
What is the purpose? To practice that?
It might be almost your vision. The vision where people can be together in this way, right? That's like what you want maybe for the world. That's kind of how I see it. It's like, what if we had a world where,
I'd have to reread my vision now, because it might be that it's already implicitly there.
And
excuse me, so I'm getting cold.
Okay.
There we go. I turned the heat down earlier. I think I've just turned it back up again.
I'm trying to remember without looking it up, your vision. And my sense was that there was something about reverence for the environment, and in that way that connects people and to their environment. Like helps them be part of something rather than separate. Again, there's this separation from, and therefore we can do things to, at, or for the environment, but not as part of the environment ourselves, like part of the, you know, the whole dance. That's my metaphor, the dance of life.
I think, I can't remember word for word. It's not quite clearly stated. It's probably implicit, but I think I might go back and revise it so that it's clear that that's included, that absolute trust between members of the community.
Yeah, and to me, this, what we're talking about now in terms of just sitting with someone and dropping all that stuff and being with, is not different from what you're saying your vision is, that you want people to recognize themselves and the environment kind of in that same sort of, we're not separate, we're not at odds with each other. It's not something I have to defend against or manipulate or, you know, decide whether, you know, I'm safe in it, but it's this kind of acceptance. And then it's more than acceptance, but acceptance is like a first step to say, you know, it is what it is. I am what I am. And here we are together. This is communion. You know, this is being with and not being against.
It does for me offer some insight into what it might have been like for the deep time ancestors who were living. People assume, perhaps there's good evidence for it, assume we're living in tribes of sort of between 20 and 50 adults with their kids.
Yeah.
Literally depending on each other for their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah.
The quality of trust and intimacy there is outside what is generally available and experienced in Western civilization.
It's almost that Western civilization has 180 degrees taught us to not trust in that way. Right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it work, and you know, be the top and the winner, and all of the ways that we teach people to what is it? You know, like it's fame and fortune and success, and you know, all those things are in a sense competitive rather than collaborative. And you know, it's me having to stake my claim, right, is a word I, you know, like instead of just receive the love of my fellow beings, right? There's this kind of aggressive having to make your way in the world. You know, the language is all kind of like that.
Yeah, the rugged, self-sufficient individual. That's a particularly strong vision in the USA, I think.
Especially in the US. Yeah. Yeah.
Thoreau and writers like that, they're sort of the woodsman.
Yeah. And so, you know, as an infant, even the way we're treated. Oh, there was this whole, I'm sure it's still alive, that if the baby cries and you pick it up, it's manipulating you. You shouldn't do that. You'll spoil it because it will now, you know, manipulate you emotionally. Like, how off is that, right? I mean, that is just,
can't even trust your baby. If they're trying to manipulate you, don't trust them.
Exactly. So
oh, fuck's sake.
so it's so
I
Oh,
remember some friends of my mother when I was in my 20s. It was the standard practice that when the baby cried, you didn't give them any attention until they're really wailing.
right.
And I
What?
remember hearing the father sort of looked over at the baby in the carrier crying, and he said, "Come on, you can do better than that." Oh, even then, that
Yeah,
hurt to hear. That this
yeah,
would be 40
yeah.
years ago.
Pull it together, you infant that knows nothing about life yet and doesn't
Yeah, if you're
have
gonna
none of,
cry, let's.
yeah, it's like, that's
Mm.
what, how many generations of that too, like where it just, uh uh yeah, God.
Mm. I mean, I'm interested also about um, how this relates to something that, and I wish I could remember it better, but Mickey spoke sometime earlier last year, or maybe around the middle of last year, that there's an assumption, I think in Western culture, there's an assumption that the people who follow Eastern practices in religions are looking towards some kind of enlightenment, which results in the annihilation of the self.
Yeah.
And Mickey was saying that might not be correct. That's an assumption that we've made in the West, and it might be that we don't lose our sense of self. We end with a different sense of self.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if a lot of the behavior that I see in myself, and not so much now, but I mean in the past,
Right.
and still amongst a lot of people, there's
Yeah.
that sort of slightly narcissistic behavior. People are desperate. They're going outside of themselves, desperate for confirmation or recognition or praise or what have you.
Validation, recognition. Yeah. Yeah.
And that seems to me quite a fragile sense of self when somebody is so desperate for that. And that if we progress beyond that to some self-acceptance,
Right.
which I kind of blundered into that really by, oh, it's a longer story, that doesn't really matter, but I chose,
Mm-hmm.
I made a decision, and it was through something I heard in an AA meeting. I made a decision that I would find my ethical values and live by them.
Mm-hmm.
And that indirectly led to a sense of self-acceptance.
Yeah. You looked for yourself and
Yeah.
your self-definition rather than how, let me look out here and see how the culture defines me. And then can I be accepted if this is this whole thing. This is leading right into what I wanted to share with you, which today I'm realizing. And that is, how you shared the poem with me about risking our significance. That was that line.
The Dora Markova. Yeah.
And for me, that word, I've been like, is that what it is? I guess it is. It seems like it's close. And then I had a much deeper insight around that. And I think in many ways, our culture does see it as risking our significance. Like, do I have value? And because if I have value, then I will belong and I won't be this is the next layer that I think it's underneath that. And what we really have to have is belonging, because our whole nervous system, as you're talking about the tribal 50 people, if we're cast out, we're dead, right? We're not going to survive on our own in those times. And our nervous system knows that. And human beings are built. Look at how the infants need to be like helpless for a while to be able to build this relational piece that creates, society basically, or tribe or community. Because if we could just run off like a baby sheep does, I mean, they still are dependent, but they can run, and we as infants, we can't, we're toast if we're not
Helpless, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, because I realized I read something from Sarah Payton about when we stand out from our tribe's norm, speak up or stand out, we get anxious. And the reason, this fits me anyway, and I speak out and do it a lot, but I still have the anxiety. It's like, and the reason we have anxiety is because we're risking our belongingness.
Mm.
And
Is this enough to get me exiled?
exactly.
Exile is death, so.
Exactly. And so there was another layer that came with her, just reading notes, was mostly what our culture gets by with giving us when we risk belonging is reassurance. Oh, it's okay. You're loved. Don't worry. You didn't do a really bad thing. This is what people offer us when we're going like, I'm in anxiety now that I just risked belonging. And people give us words to say, it's okay, you belong. But it isn't enough, really. What we want then, according to this teacher, and I'm just exploring, like, is this true for me? Is we want to be, let's see if I can find the right words, because it's pretty fresh in her language and trying to find my language. We want to know that what we did when we risked met the needs of someone in our tribe, that it was a gift to them, so that we risked. You got it. Yeah.
Because I imagine from our ancestors that exile would be a last resort and only for endangering the tribe. Do you remember Mickey saying that shame, because shame is probably the most painful and difficult emotion to deal with or feeling to experience, and because it's the fear of death. Right. It's the fear that whatever I've done is going to get me thrown out of the tribe.
Exactly.
And it was what Mickey was saying, it was originally intended to be used very rarely in service of the whole, and now it's used frequently in service of the powerful.
Exactly. This 180 degrees, again, using it all the time to keep people like nervous about whether they belong, all the time.
So these days, our boss at work isn't allowed to say, do as I say or I'll kill you, but he can say, do as I say or you're fired.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to strip you.
And then a month later, you can't pay the mortgage or the rent.
Exactly. So there's a practice that Sarah uses in her workshops. And at first it was new to me and kind of strange. And I didn't even really know how to do it. And I'm still learning. But this has answered the question for me. So when she's in, these are deep emotional, interpersonal, trauma-based sort of workshops where people interact with her, and they're exposed to everybody. Like when you're working with her with your personal issues, everybody sees it. So you're, in a sense, very much risking your belongingness because you're very, very exposed.
She does a year-long program, doesn't she, where people go for a longish, 3 or 4 day retreats every month or so.
I'm not sure. I know I've been on a 4-day intensive with her at this point, and some follow-ups, and then
she mixes in family constellation, doesn't she?
Yeah, she has that as well as unconscious contracts. So there's other layers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the contracts. Yeah, the sacred vows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but to finish my point, what she does is once something has sort of developed and concluded with someone, and of course she's really there, so she's sort of holding the person in the sense that she's so good at that. But yet we're sitting here with 50 other people. That's our tribe, and we just went through deep exposing, work, plus took up a lot of people's time, right? You know, and what she does is at that moment, she invites people, whoever is participating, to put into the chat, because it's done on Zoom, needs met and gifts received through that person's work. So whatever, in other words, like, in NVC languages, wow, you met my need for shared reality, meaning I've had a really similar experience. What you just went through helped me, so that the person feels like several things. They've been held by the instructor, but now the whole community is saying, thank you. What you did in risking your belonging was really useful for me, and I appreciate you for that. And
that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really important. And I yeah, thank you for pausing there. I have one more thing to say, but it's just what I can't tell you how often I have risked belonging without knowing that's what I was doing, by stating a viewpoint, or, bringing in my opinion, or, in some way speaking something outside of what seems to be in the box, shall we say, or even something so personal about my own present emotions, even, or something like that, something that's just our culture usually doesn't do. And in a group or one-on-one, this was used to, and after doing that, I would just sit in a state of panic. All of my, oh no, I risked belonging, am I going to get outcast? I didn't know what it was, but I would sit and I would wonder, after I'd share like that, why I felt so scared, so absolutely scared. And now I realize what I need at that point. And I need to be in connection with people and saying, how did that just affect you? I need to know back. And I never knew I could
in the way that you heard with Sarah.
Yeah. I never knew I could ask for that, or that was a thing, because people usually just move on to the next person or the next, like, that's part of a really important part of, I don't know, I would even call it self-care, for lack of a better term, for self-awareness, to say, wow, I just did this thing and I have this need now. Please, will you say some words back to me? And I've lived on some reassurance in some of these groups. Oh, I thought that was really courageous. Or, you're a, you're a permission giver. They'll give me like left brain sort of label. But what I want to hear is, wow, I was touched by that because I've had a similar experience, or that really opened me up. It was a point of view I've never seen before. And I'm so glad, something that's more personal and relational rather than, some sentence about me.
Even a positive judgment is a judgment.
Yeah, exactly.
To say you're courageous, I mean, well, yeah, it's still a judgment.
There's a part
of it's impersonal. It's distancing.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It's distancing.
You see, it's interesting that you've just described something that you've now got a clear understanding of, that you've done for a while. And I was described a similar experience when I was longing for connection without properly realizing it.
Yeah.
We're learning about things about ourselves somewhat later in life than would be ideal. And I guess that's partly because we're flying solo. We're out on the edge here.
But we might actually be on the cutting edge, Mike.
Yeah.
How much of this culture knows any of this, right? In some ways,
I've not heard anyone talk about this.
It's like late in life, but it's like we're the first in some ways, which puts us even more risking belonging, you know. But
perhaps pioneering in our own little way.
Yeah, exactly.
No doubt there are others out there doing something similar, but it just seems to me a shame that I'm discovering this in my 60s when I would have been better to have discovered it in my 20s and 30s.
Oh, wouldn't have life have been sweet if we could know then what we know now or starting to know. Yeah, I know. I struggled a lot.
If we'd had wise elders in our tribe growing up, we would have done.
Exactly.
We would have learned more about ourselves at an earlier age.
Yeah. And maybe in our own
there's go on.
Well, I was just going to say,
I can't remember. It'll come. Bill Plotkin. Have you come across Bill Plotkin?
No, I don't think so. Who's that?
He talks about our. I can't remember how the ages go, but he talks about the sort of phases of growing up. And there's one we go for quite a long period through adolescence and early adulthood, where it is more important to learn the customs and traditions of our people and to fit in and to belong. And then once we're comfortable with that, then we go off and discover about ourselves. And that happens, I think, maybe late 20s, something like that. And I think this is at least partly inspired by some of
maybe that's his.
I think this is partly inspired by Native American traditions.
That could make sense, because a whole different culture holding a whole different timeline. You know, they also went through coming of age ceremonies and things. Well, we go to college and we get told more stuff and we just have a whole different thing. But I agree that I think he probably has the progression correct, you know, in terms of, I haven't looked at it, but in terms of what are we doing when we're an infant, and when we're about 2 years old, we start to get a sense of, wait, I could make a decision different than yours. You know, that's a new thing from an infant. An infant is just going along with what is and has personal needs. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I don't want to do that. You know, no, they get the word no in their vocabulary and so on, you know. And then there's
the other thing that the other thing that Plotkin wrote about, which was a big aha for me, was, you just mentioned it, about these coming of age. We don't have that in our culture. We don't initiate youngsters into adulthood, adolescents into adulthood. And he reckons that and I agree with him. It makes so much, having been a young man once.
Yes.
It makes so much sense that we have an innate longing for initiation. And if we don't receive it from our fathers and our grandfathers and our uncles, we try and initiate ourselves, which is why so many young men get involved in gangs and dangerous sports and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And in cultures where there are some cultures where the initiation is actually quite dangerous, and some of the young men die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Plotkin reckons that a smaller proportion of them die than in America die from drugs, gangs, guns,
for sure,
dangerous sports.
For sure. Well,
so we are desperate for that initiation.
Absolutely.
And we don't get it.
You know, if it is life-threatening, then it's high risk. It's like this is a high stakes is the word I want. In other words, like, this is an important thing to get right, you know, to get through. And not all of us make it. And that tends to concentrate us and it, you know. So I would, I probably, there's little bits of this kind of thinking that has come across my doorstep from time to time. I haven't studied with anyone, but I get it myself. in many ways, this whole idea of course, we're as dysfunctional as we are. Look what we were raised in. You know, I mean, of course,
We were
we're as
raised in a
lonely
civilization
and
that wasn't
lost
designed for
and
humans.
confused and, you know, desperate and lonely and depressed and all these other things that, you know, our culture hasn't acknowledged, basically. Hasn't acknowledged. And so, and because we're confused, those who see an opportunity create something we can buy to try to fix something that can't be fixed that way. Right? So there's that layer as well, where if I just make enough money or take the right drugs or get the right woman or, you know, all these kinds of ways, have sexy teeth, you know, they're just like opportunity after opportunity to try to, you know, to convince people that my product is going to heal you.
I mean, the sort of the consumer culture is so seductive. It's easy to recognize that it's false, but it is so seductive.
It's because it's the dopamine culture. It's dopamine that gets us wanting more and getting a little bit of a
one more purchase and everything will be fine.
Yeah. And we get a little reward each time. There is a reward in the dopamine.
There is a little bit of dopamine, but not for long.
No, exactly. It doesn't give you the oxytocin, which is the tribal belonging, you know, intimacy. That's just, you know, that's an interesting subject in itself, that whole oxytocin. Because for me, learning touch-based dance and more sense of my own body and this whole circuit that feeds us relationally through oxytocin and really has so many sort of satisfying kind of benefits to all of our systems. And yet most of us don't even know how to. This is the whole thing. Intimacy is terrifying. So how do we even get the oxytocin we need, right?
Oxytocin, that's a chemical we produce.
We produce it when we hug someone, when we're touched with a non-therapeutic touch, when we have a sexual release, or even in the process of a sexual encounter, there's tons of oxytocin, but especially once we climax, then that just floods our system. It's the chemical mother and the baby, and that bonding creates oxytocin. So it's the humanity, human to human, embodied connection chemical. The mammal to mammal.
In particularly short supply at the moment then.
Well, people are starving for it. Yeah. And reaching for it, but getting dopamine.
Hope for nearly a year.
We get dopamine, but no oxytocin, you know. When you think about this, when you're on your little text, your little device, and you get, you've got a message, you get immediate dopamine. But since the person's on a screen and you can't be with them, and most of it is sort of head interactions, or we don't get the oxytocin. So we get part of it, but not all of it, over and over again. And
this is one of the reasons that I dumped social media.
Yeah, it's empty. You know, it's titillating but empty. For what we're really hungry for. It's like eating empty calories, sugar, 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 you know, and your body's starving for nutrition, but you just keep eating more sugar because it's addictive. I never thought of it, but that's a really parallel metaphor.
Yeah, junk food, junk culture. Yeah. Something that's attractive, seductive, that doesn't work. Doesn't do what it claims to do.
And yet it's addictive because it gives you a little something, right? It gives you something. The moment you taste that salt and that fat and that sweet together, you go, oh, you're not, your system lights up.
Yeah, but not for long.
Yeah, but it lights up, and it needs to light up, because it never gets the climax. You don't get, it's like constant
You end up with
arousal.
people who are,
Yeah.
you end up with people who are dangerously obese and malnourished.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And most of them have trauma, emotional and sexual trauma.
Yeah.
That they're trying to not feel because they had nobody there with them, and it was betrayal, and it was whatever, all of that that's just unprocessable by themselves.
Mm.
That's our challenge.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that sort of leads into that whole thing around addiction, doesn't it?
Of course.
And Johan Hari is a British journalist who wrote about, so he managed to read and understand enough all the science, and then wrote it up in a way that was readable by the general public.
Yeah.
And he summarized it as the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yep. And another person, are you familiar with Gabor Mate, Canadian?
Oh yeah, I watched him many times on YouTube. He's great.
He's basically saying the same thing, right? And he was a doctor, successful, blah, 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 and addicted and disconnected. And he has his own personal experience of it. So he's not just talking from, the science. He's talking from his heart as well, and his own struggle. Which,
when he talks about raising children, I could just weep, because what he's saying is, it's so obvious and it's so rare.
Yeah.
Every time you punish or scold a child, you're telling them there are parts of themselves that are unlovable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes you want to give yourself a little comfort, right?
Jesus, yeah. I mean, it's just, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
A bit late now. I'd make a better father now than I would have done when I was at an age that was more likely to become a father.
Maybe, well, that's a question too. Like, I knew when I was in my 20s, I actually got pregnant, I would be the shittiest mother ever, because I had no tools. All I knew was how I was raised, and I was miserable. And I knew, maybe it could have been different, but I don't think so. I think I would have just repeated, or what I received, and trying not to, but still unable to do differently, because didn't have any understanding even of why I was so crazy, basically, and so depressed and so disconnected and pretty miserable, and still functional enough to kind of like have a job, which I didn't do very well either. To kind of cripple my way through life. Yeah.
You didn't keep the baby?
Nope. And I don't have regrets. There was a time I processed that, but I don't have preciousness around the unborn soul, because I have a bigger point of view that we were in agreement. That was some kind of pact we made, and so yeah.
When I was married and my now ex-wife wanted children, I was drunk all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything that was going to risk my income, because my income was for, I managed to function. I held down a job, and it was the money was going in the bar.
Your primary partner was booze.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think those are wise decisions on our part. Otherwise, it would have just like burdened another generation, right? That would have, who knows? But still, that's how I feel about it. I have no regrets. I think I had enough.
I have none either. I was at a gathering of NVC people a couple of years ago, and one of the women there wanted to sit and have a conversation, because she didn't want children. And even her therapist was giving her a hard time because she didn't want children. And she wanted to speak to someone. She wanted some empathy, or an empathic conversation with someone who had chosen not to have children. And she asked me if I'd do it. I said, yeah, sure. And we sat I don't know, at least half an hour, maybe 3/4 of an hour. And she said, I really don't want children. I said, yeah, I get it. You really don't want children? She said, yes, yes.
Thank you.
And we just did that kind of conversation for all that time. Then afterwards, she said, that was the best empathy ever.
Get it. You really
The
don't.
last thing you need in your life is a screaming, wailing little shit factory. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Because I'm already a screaming little shit factory. And
So yeah, no, I absolutely get it. I have absolutely no regret. There was a time when I regretted it, but I was still drunk when I regretted it. Since I got sober, I thought,
was that even real regret? Who knows?
After I was divorced, before I got sober.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it would have been, yeah, as you say, I'd have passed on all those bad patterns. No matter how much I thought I wasn't doing what my parents did, I would have been doing what my parents did.
Yeah, me too. Someone in a group had this beautiful empathic sentence that I have taken to heart, and I see if I can use it here, which is, do you have grief for the fathering you wished you could have done?
No.
What I'm saying there, of course, and I can hear you no, for sure, because maybe it didn't hit, but it's sort of like my sort of idea of what wonderful, say, mothering could be, and that I've never experienced, but I also know I was never ready to, I couldn't have experienced it, but in a sense, whatever, if I had sort of that desire at some point or some fantasy of it, or even can see the culture that some people really value it, then I can say, yeah, I have a little grief for the mothering that I wished I could have been able to provide, and
I have more regret about the grandfathering that I'm not able to do at the moment.
Okay, so now you can have it at that level, right?
So these days I'd make a pretty good grandfather.
Yeah, me too. I'd make a good granny. I actually, okay, so I'm jumping.
That's cool.
Yeah, let me just take a breath because I'm trying to practice.
Sure, we're a little after the top of the hour.
We are, and I want to check in with you about that.
Yeah.
You have any squish, like 5 minutes? Because I don't like to just end.
No, that's fine. I've got a little wrap up time, but I'm
okay. All right, we're on
wrap
up. We're going towards wrap up now.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
I'm most interested that from apparently completely different starting points, we've arrived at something that we have in common.
That's interesting.
It is intriguing.
And I'm curious what you mean by starting points, if you mean today or from our birth, or from what starting point is the starting
point?
From
the beginning of this this partnership.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about that, but in the interest of time, I'll say there was something about, I use the word chemistry. For me, it was like the way I could be with you and you could be with me back, that I experienced in our purpose meetings, that without any, like, do we have a similar purpose? Do we live close enough? Does the timing, without any of that, it was like, I guess what I could say as a wrap up is it felt to me like what Callahan offered. Can you just sit with this person? And that, what I knew was the deepest of what I wanted, that was.
I see. Yeah. Okay. So that's something we share, that to value that quality of connection,
Exactly.
trust,
exactly,
to bring the integrity that encourages trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. I really love the clarity you've put around it there.
I've been trying to
Because
say
you'd
it
asked me to say again.
I said I've been trying to say it this whole hour.
Yeah, yeah, and it took me a while to catch up with you. Because if you'd asked me to explain what I was on about,
it took you how long it took you, and here you
yeah,
are.
it takes as long as
And
it takes.
that's the point. Here you are. Here we are. For me. And I also realized I just overrode you, because yeah, it did take you a while. I was not in a hurry.
That's something that's become, over the years I've been around MVC, I've come to really value is to allow things to take as long as they take.
Yeah.
There's so much, and particularly because I worked in industry for so long, there's so much pressure to just keep on pressing forward. And sometimes we're ill prepared.
Yeah.
And if we'd have hung around that thing that was supposed to take a day, but it looks like it's going to take a week, if we'd have given it the week, we wouldn't now be in the mess we're in today, a year later.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
just let it take as long as it takes.
Yeah. Exactly. Which is, I'm trying to find words for this. It's kind of the only way it works.
In the long run, I think, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we really are sort of heading to something, which we are, even if it's just expansion of ourself, you know, it takes us the time it takes. And if we try to manipulate that, like we do our environment and other people and everything else, it makes a mess. Well, maybe the mess is part of it, but it really, anyway, I get lost in that.
Yeah.
And learning to let go of my need to get to some goal has brought me to those outcomes so much more easily and quickly than when I get sort of blinded and single focused and and more often actually gets me there or whoever I'm going with, us both, you know. It's just sort of like, can you hear my wind chimes?
No.
No. I must have my background noise suppressed too much. They're pretty nice right now. Let me check my settings here and go into advanced settings. I have another sentence I want to say. That was my segue. Let's see, music. Let's see if it's here. Yeah, I have it aggressive. I don't know if that's auto. Anyway, that'll change it. So I think I'm pretty sure that I told you my purpose is to live my fullest aliveness. And now it's a little more extended. And it is that my purpose is to live my fullest aliveness moment to moment. You see how that removes the separation? It's not something out there.
No longer something you'll do tomorrow or next week or
right.
when you've got a minute.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
the first time I settled into a state of mind that I would consider to be meditation, where I surprised myself by becoming present to where I was and what was going on around me. I was in the checkout queue at the supermarket.
Why not? Chop wood, carry water.
And I just woke up. And I can hear that's the background noise of the air conditioning and the hum of voices and the rattle of different, because there's a whole row of checkouts. And then what I could see was all the detail. It's like I'd been out of tune all my life and somebody just turned the knob a little bit and everything became clear.
That's a perfect metaphor. You know, someone just put glasses on all this time. You thought you were seeing, and now,
right, I needed glasses, yeah. Or took them off because they were filthy.
Maybe that too.
Yeah. So yeah, moment to moment, standing in the checkout queue, you could be fully alive.
Yeah. You can hear the wind chimes, even though you're focused on the Zoom screen. Oh, you thought
no, I can't. I still can't hear them.
I meant me, but you know, I know you can't.
You can.
I can feel how I need to open the window. We need to close. I think I'm going to try to honor that because I really want to avoid you jumping off fast without a goodbye. I don't like that at all. I just don't like it. So.
I too enjoy a proper closing, a proper opening and a proper closing.
Yeah.
Which is why when we have those group meetings, if there's going to be an after party, I'd still ask that people pause at 1:30 or whatever the agreed time is. So we have a close.
We have a little.
And then an after party, rather than some of us just having to drop out because we're full.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm left one. This is what I'm taking away from today. I think I'm wondering in this longing and this wondering, this searching for connection, more for people more generally, and for me. What part does my sense of self play in this? And what is there some part that is lost when I am more closely connected? I think it's going to be different, but it's something that I'm wondering. Might even ask Mickey about it.
What part is, this is where we could have started. I'm going to transcribe this. I think this is a rich question. Just as a little segue. That's my business mind. Hold on. What part will I lose? That's what you said. What part will be lost if I, in some ways, surrender or open or drop into this full connection? Is that what yeah. Because it's that part that we want to hear from. Because it's the one saying, no, not yet. Don't do it. What are its needs? What does it think? What, right?
How does it serve us? Yeah. How will myself be different?
Yeah. And obviously it thinks we're going to lose something, right? Is it true? And what might that
going to lose the myth of the rugged individual?
Yeah, and how does that serve us? I mean, you can see how we take that deeper and deeper and deeper and see what's really down at the bottom of that. That I think would be really rich exploration. Yeah.
Perhaps that will be our starting point next time.
Yeah, for both of us. Let's do that.
Good.
Handshake.
Yeah.
Agreement.
Hopefully, well, probably not because you're halfway around the world, but one day maybe a hug.
Hug. Oh, I can do an imaginary.
I should be surprised if we ever meet in person. Who knows?
Do an imaginary. Let's see. Yeah, I can't release my arms. That's too phony, but I can imagine you in my arms. Yeah, your solidness, your chest, your oxytocin. Yay! Finally.
Bottle that, you'll make a fortune. There
Oh
we are.
God, you bet. Oh,
Have an excellent day.
you too. We'll see you on Wednesday.
See you on Wednesday.
Okay. Bye, Mike.
Till then. Bye-bye.